How's it going, everybody? This is Jason over at Olsen Motorsports, and today we're going to be showing you how to install the RPG collar on a front strut on a 2019 Ford Raptor. First, we want to start off by jacking the vehicle up so you could have access to taking the strut off. When you jack the vehicle up, you always want to make sure you have jack stands. It's always number one. It's important. I always like to put them on the frame rail and just maybe put a few around the, under the suspension arms, just for added security. I already have the tire loose, but usually you want to break the tire loose when the vehicle is on the ground. Just a quick, crank the lug nuts just so it's easier to come off. So I'm going to start off by just taking these off. So these are the RPG collars, and they're actually going to sit right here. So what we have to do is we have to remove the strut, and then this is a collar that you just kind of, you were going to hit it up a little bit just so there's room for this to fit in there. But before we do any of that, we got to take it off. I like to start with removing all of your, like your ABS line, your brake line. Don't remove them, but pull it from the caliper, unplug everything, because when you take off the control arms or suspension arms, you don't want this arm flopping, and that could damage your brake lines or your ABS wire, and then, you got to replace some more parts. So I'm going to start with that first. First, we want to start off by taking off the ABS wire. It's routed right up here, just held in by a clip. And then you have one 8mm bolt that goes right here, easily just comes right out. You're going to have some that are kind of like a crimp styled in there. You just get a little fork and you just go behind it and just kind of work it out, and I'll eventually just come right out. You got one more up here. Same thing, just kind of work it a little bit. You don't want to rip it off because then you'll break it, so just kind of work it out. You got one little connector up here. Okay, so this is free, and then you're going to have a connection inside the engine bay that you're going to have to go up in the bay, and then you're going to have to find it and disconnect it. So let's do that. Truck's a little tall, so I need a stool. So it's a little buried in here. It's actually in between the air box and the brake master cylinder. It is on this model vehicle, it is a brown plug. So if you just look for the brown plug, you'll be able to see it. And there's going to be a lock on there. If you can, it's going to be this one. And there's going to be a red lock on there that you're going to have to get a little screwdriver or a little pick. You just got to kind of pop that one free. Again, just take it easy with it. You don't want to break them. Little force, they just pop right out like that. And then you find the clip, and just like that, comes unplugged. And then since you unclipped it from everything, you can just come back down here and pull it out. And just put it off to the side for now, somewhere where it really won't get damaged. And just kind of watch it. You don't want to damage that. And then what I like to do is take the brake caliper off, because that is connected to your brake hose. And like I said, once you start taking off the main suspension components, you don't want this flopping, or you don't want all the tension on your rubber brake hose, because you don't want it to snap. So holding on there is a 10mm bolt. So undo that, and then freeze up your brake line, and you're going to have some more. You're going to have the vacuum hose for the four-wheel drive connected to it. So you just get your fork, you just kind of get behind it, kind of got to work it out a little bit. Some are trickier than others. Oh, this is actually a different style. There you go. So this is free, and then we will loosen up the caliper. And Ford, I could actually show you when I get these bolts out. Ford likes to use Loctite from factory on their bolts. So if you're using regular hand tools or electric tools, it might be a little hard, but you know, they will come out. It's just the Loctite is what keep them on there. So yeah, I'm gonna get this out. Right over here. So I like to use my 1/2 inch, and the bolts are a 21. And like I said, they're a little tight to come out just because of the Loctite, but they will come out. You want to support the caliper a little bit just so when you get the bolts out, it doesn't flop down. I'm using my knee. And then what I like to do is get an extra jack stand, place it on there so it's not flopping around, or you're not letting it hang on anything. So make sure that's nice and secure over there. It's not going anywhere. And then the next step, which I find is the easiest way, is to remove your tie rod. And then we're going to remove this cap, and behind there is the axle nut, just so when we take the spindle out, everything can kind of move freely. So I'm going to start with the tie rod first. Get that popped out. And a lot of times what was actually happening to me here is, you know, as you're twisting this out, sometimes the whole tie rod turns in there and it makes it hard to come out. So what I learned with the air tools, you just kind of sit there and you wrap it a little bit, and it'll kind of just, you know, it'll spin the nut faster than it could spin the joint. Or if you don't have power tools, you can use a 18 mil, or this is a 20 mil wrench to hold the nut, and this is a 10 mil. So you use your 21 to hold this, and you get like a 10 mil ratchet, and you can actually spin the joint while the nut's in place and it'll come out. So keep that there. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take out this cap to access the axle nut. And for this, sometimes you get lucky and they pop right out. Sometimes you don't. I have to try to get behind it a little bit. Starts to come free. You don't want to go too much at it because you don't want to damage the nut or the cap. Kind of pop it out. And there you go. Pops right out. And then behind here, you just want to take this nut out and it'll let the axle move freely. So it's a 13 mil, and you just kind of and there you go. And I like to keep everything kind of in order so you're not losing your stuff. We'll put it over here. And then we're gonna have this vacuum hose that controls your 4-wheel drive. And it's a rubber hose, so you can kind of just pull on it a little bit and you'll see it starting to come out, just like that. Took that off to the side again. Make sure you're good. All right, so now your spindle can move freely. So we're gonna take off the upper control arm next, and you wanna make sure you have something underneath the lower control arm, because when this frees up, this is gonna drop, it's gonna fly forward. You wanna avoid that because you don't wanna damage anything. So we're gonna put a jack under the front control arm. Just do a little tension on it. None too crazy, just a little bit to hold it up. This is a 21 as well, or an 18. All right, so now that we got the upper control arm free from the spindle, we're just gonna kind of let pop the axle out a little bit. And what I like to do is I like to get a rope. Actually, can you hand me that if you can? What I like to do is so you don't have your spindle flop forward, any damage. I like to just get some hooks. just for the added security here. Kind of just latch it, you know, just so it can hang and you don't have to worry about anything. So we're gonna drop this a little bit. Drop this control arm a little bit. Let that kind of come down. Okay. So the next step, it's gonna be a little challenging because where they place it are the top strut bolts. There's 3 of them, and the easiest way is to see if you can get them through the engine bay, or if you can't, you're gonna have to kind of just wrench them from inside. So I'm gonna take a look on the inside, see how those look, and see if I can get them out. We're gonna unplug the sensor that's connected to the strut itself, and it's another thing. It's just got to get your little fork, get underneath it, just kind of work it out like that. There's one over here, so let me get it. Okay, then you got one on the frame as well. And this one looks like it's leaning inside the engine bay as well. So we got to go back in there and find the plug. Okay, yep, the sensor on the strut is actually right next to the ABS sensor that we unplugged earlier. So we could just unplug that one. Okay, looks like that. So we can just let that kind of fish down. Make sure that's out of harm's way. Okay. Another thing we can take off is the end link. That's going to allow your control arm to drop just a little bit more. So we're going to take that off, see if that can give us some more clearance on getting this thing out. So that should be a 18 as well. So let's see if that fits in there. Okay, so see, that's an example of it not coming out for you the way just a quick burst. So we'll do it the other way. So let me get my 18, and I'll show you how that comes out this way. What you do is you just put your wrench on this side, and you're turning the end link while the nut is stationary, and you kind of just keep going and work its way out. Let's see if you, yep. There you go. And get that right out. I'll just put that on there so we don't lose it. All right, so now we can move on to the strut tower bolts. So let's see how we can get to those. All right, so the passenger or the driver's side is a little bit easier than the passenger side. You can actually access the driver's side just from the top. You can see them all. The passenger side is it's a little covered by some stuff, so it's a little bit more of a challenge to get to. But the driver's side bolts, you can easily just get an 18 in there with a pretty long extension and crack them free. So that's what we're going to do. And again, while you're doing these, you want to make sure you have some pressure on that lower control arm, because once you take these three bolts out, the strut and the control arm can just drop, and that's what that's what you don't want to have happen. You don't want to cause any more damage. So I'm actually going to check my jack, make sure I'm good. All right, so I got my 3 out. We're going to go head back down and see what's next. All right, so next is this lower strut bolt. This is the nut's going to be a 30 mil, and then the bolt, I believe, is a 27. I like to use the air tools, because that's really just gonna power right off. You could use your hand tools. It's gonna be really tight. It's gonna take a while, but it will come off. So we got that off. Next, we're going to have to get that the bolts out. And then what I like to use is, you get maybe like a hammer. You can see if it. It's a slow process. So when you get toward the end, you maybe get something else, like you get like one of your picks or your chisels, and just. So, and a lot of times you can actually twist it out. Oh, speed up the process a little bit. Yeah, see? What's happening now is, since there's so much tension on this spring, the bolt's starting to kind of go crooked. So we're going to lower this a little bit, see if we can get this straightened out so we don't ruin the bolts. Keep going. Okay, yeah, this is where it gets tricky, because there's just so much tension on everything. All right. So we're going to slowly lower the jack to see if we can free up the strut. So you want to go slow, because if you go fast, it has the potential just to drop down. All right, another thing I found out what you can do is you can actually loosen up these control arm bolts, because it's kind of going to take some pressure off these, so the control arm can drop just a little bit more. So I'm just going to loosen these up a little bit, and hopefully the control arm drops. Might be better to put just by hand one of the strut tower or the strut mount bolts. Just thread it up there, just by hand a little bit, so it doesn't drop on you. All right, you want to lower the jack. Okay. All right, so that's free now. You kind of just want to support everything so nothing's kind of hanging. And then we'll just undo that bolt up top. And there you go. There's how you remove your strut. A little time consuming, but it can be done. It's a safe way to do everything. Then what we'll do now is jack the control arm back up. Just so nothing's hanging. Get the axle popped in. Get your straps ready. Whew. Alrighty. Cool. All right, so I brought the strut over to the spring compressor, and before you do anything, I like to mark the position of the strut mount, the spring, just so when you compress everything, just in case something moves, you know exactly how it's supposed to go back in. You can adjust. So I like to run a straight line down the side, clean it off a little bit. And just kind of mark it, just so you know how everything goes. And the reason you do this, because if you compress it and your strut mount turns a little bit or your spring moves a little bit and you don't know, when you go back in to reinstall everything, your strut mount might just be a little off from where it goes to the lower strut mount, and then none's gonna line up. So I like to mark it just so you have all your lines ready and it's an easy install.
Yes. Can you give me like 5 minutes? Yeah. Can you give another day?
Good?
Yeah.
So get your spring compressor ready. And this is the safest way to do it, is one of these kind of stage spring compressors. You can rent the ones from AutoZone that just clamp. They're pretty dangerous, so do that under your own discretion. This is the safest way, and I always like to wear safety glasses because safety first. And let's get this up there. And the reason why I really stress using one of these styles is because you can kind of lock everything down. You lock this, so if something happens, your arms don't, they don't come out and everything just goes flying. So make sure everything's locked. And when you put these on a spring compressor, you want to make sure it's even. So I'm using the bottom spring, second, first, the second one. So it's going to be it's going to compress out nicely. So if you had like one here and then one here, it's going to be a little lopsided, and it's a little bit more dangerous that way. So now we're going to start compressing. Just double check you're all good. Safety first always. Now this is a pretty massive spring, so it's going to take a bit. That's what happened. So this is actually, usually when you're compressing the springs, it actually pulls it in from the bottom, but in this case, it's actually taking it from the top. So what you got to do, just kind of wiggle it back down, and there you go. So you got enough room here. Make sure your lines are still good. This is the Perch, is you're going to want to spray it up a little bit, because who knows how long it's been in there. It's not going to move freely. So just spray it up. And then you just kind of got to give it a few taps. Secure your wire. See if it moves. So it's moving. And always use a rubber mallet, because if you're using a regular hammer, you're just going to sit here, you're going to damage it, you're going to chip it up. So something soft, and you just kind of want to go around. And you're going to take off these rings. It's kind of almost like a snap ring. Holds this in place, but the new Perch has it in there already. So when we get to there, I'll show you how this works. So hit it up just a little bit more. Okay. Get a rag, you want to clean it off. And let's see if that's enough. You unscrew them. This is a 3/16 Allen bolt. There's two of them. All right, so keep them separated. And if you can see this groove right here, that's actually is what's going to lock into here. So you want to make sure it's nice and clean. Okay. And just give a little tap in the back, make sure it's in. Okay. And then same thing in the front. Make sure you're lined up with your grooves. Give it a little tap. And you're going to have a little gap on both sides. I just kind of like to make it an even gap. So, start your bolts. Don't tighten it all the way because you got to start your other bolt too. And you don't want to crank down one side because it's going to be uneven. Okay. So once you have bolts snug, just kind of go back and forth to each one, just so that gap is even. Okay. You don't want to go crazy tight, but you know, make sure you're a little snug in there, both sides. Okay, so we're good. Do a little quick visual, make sure everything's all right. And then we're going to take the tension off the spring. And if you could see, right here, this little lip, that lip is actually going to go inside of here. So when you're taking the tension off, if you hear a pop, that's just the sleeve going inside the perch. Just like that. So that's it, popped in there. You kind of just keep going, and it's going to go right in. All right, so double check all your lines. Okay, so I was a little off. So I just put some more tension on the spring a little bit. I'm just gonna kind of move it over a little bit so everything lines up. There we go. So now we're gonna take the tension fully off. And there you have it. That's installed. And what I like to do, just do a quick little check, make sure everything's still good. And everything's still tight. And that is how you install the RPG collar onto a strut. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop them below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like it, and then check us out on our Instagram. Thank you.